All right, guys, we are going on to our next chapter. This one is called Bruno Jenkins Disappears. In our last chapter, we heard from the Grand High Witch about her recipe, and our narrator made sure to remind us that in the meanwhile, when all of this is going on, he's still hiding there behind that screen, trying not to get caught. And the problem that came up in this chapter is that his mice actually got loose and they were running around on the stage with the Grand High Witch. So the connection question for this chapter is, what do you think it means to be greedy? And it asks to explain. So you'll need to write a couple of sentences for this, because first you need to state the answer to your question. And then you need to give some examples and details to support that answer. So make sure that you really think about that and include plenty in there if you're going to answer this for bonus points. I can only give you bonus points if you're doing the work for them. So the three words that we have for this chapter are intently. So if you're looking at something intently. Boasting, which we've already actually heard that, I think, in this book. So think about that. And the word envy, E-N-V-Y, envy. So we will go ahead and get started. The Grand High Witch was starting to talk again. "I am now going to prove to you," she said, "that this recipe is working for perfection. You understand, of course, that you can set the alarm clock to go off at any time you like. It does not have to be 9 o'clock. So yesterday, I am personally preparing a small quantity of this magic formula in order to give you a public demonstration. But I am making one small change in the recipe. Before I am roasting the alarm clock, I am setting it to go off not at 9 o'clock the next morning, but at 3:30 the next afternoon, which means 3:30 this afternoon. And that," she said, glancing at her wristwatch, "is precisely 7 minutes' time." The audience of witches was listening intently, sensing that something dramatic was about to happen. "So what am I doing yesterday with this magic liquid?" she asked the Grand High Witch. "I will tell you what I am doing. I am putting one droplet into a very squishy chocolate bar, and I am giving this bar to repulsive smelly boy who is hanging around the lobby of hotel." The Grand High Witch paused. The audience remained silent, waiting for her to go on. "I watched this repulsive little brute gobbling up the squishy candy bar of chocolate, and when he had finished, I said to him, 'Was that good?' He said it was great, so I said to him, 'Would you like some more?' And he said yes, so I said, 'I will give you 6 more chocolate bars if you will meet me in the ballroom of this hotel at 3:25 tomorrow afternoon.' 6 bars, cried this greedy little swine. "I'll be there, and you bet I'll be there." "So the stage is set," pronounced the Grand High Witch. "The proof of the pudding is about to begin. Do not forget that before I am roasting the alarm clock yesterday, I am setting it for 3:30 today. It is now," she glanced again at her watch, "it is now exactly 25 minutes past 3, and the nasty little stinker who will be turning into a mouse in 5 minutes' time should at this very moment be standing outside the doors." And by gum, she was absolutely right. The boy, whoever he might be, was already rattling the door handle and banging on the doors with his fist. "Quick!" shouted the Grand High Witch. "Put on your wigs! Put on your gloves! Put on your shoes!" There was a great rustle and bustle of putting on wigs and gloves and shoes, and I saw the Grand High Witch herself reach for her face mask and put it on over that revolting face of hers. It was astonishing how the mask transformed her. All of a sudden, she became once again a rather pretty young lady. "Let me in!" came the boy's voice from behind the doors. "Where are those chocolate bars you promised me? I'm here to collect. Dish them out." "He is not only smelly, he is also greedy," said the Grand High Witch. "Remove the chains from the door and let him come in." The extraordinary thing about the mask was that its lips moved quite naturally when she spoke. You really couldn't see it was a mask at all. One of the witches leapt to her feet and unfastened the chains. She opened the two huge doors. Then I heard her saying, "Why, hello, little man. How lovely to see you. Have you come for your chocolate bars, have you not? They are all ready for you. Do come in." The small boy wearing a white t-shirt and gray shorts and gym shoes entered the room. I recognized him at once. He was called Bruno Jenkins, and he was staying in the hotel with his parents. I didn't care for him. He was one of those boys who is always eating something whenever you meet him. Meet him in the hotel lobby and he's stuffing sponge cake into his mouth. Pass him in the corridor and he's fishing potato crisps out of a bag by the fistful. Catch sight of him in the hotel garden and he's wolfing a dairy milk bar and has two more sticking out of his trouser pocket. What's more, Bruno never stopped boasting about how his father made more money than my father and that they owned 3 cars. But worse than that, yesterday morning I had found him kneeling on the flagstone at the hotel terrace with a magnifying glass in his hand. There was a column of ants marching across one of the flagstones, and Bruno Jenkins was focusing the sun through the magnifying glass and roasting the ants one by one. "I like watching them burn," he said. "That's horrible," I cried. "Stop doing it." "Let's see you stop me," he said. At that point, I had pushed him with all my might and he had crashed sideways onto the flagstones. His magnifying glass had splintered into many pieces and he had leapt up shrieking, "My father's gonna get you for this!" Then he had run off, presumably to find his wealthy dad. That was the last time I had seen Bruno Jenkins until now. I doubted very much that he was about to be turned into a mouse. Although I must confess that I was secretly hoping it might happen. Either way, I didn't envy him being up there in front of all those witches. "Darling boy," cooed the Grand High Witch from up the platform, "I have your chocolates all ready for you. Come up here first and say hello to all these lovely ladies." Her voice was quite different now. It was soft and gentle and absolutely dripping with syrup. Bruno was looking a bit bewildered. But he allowed himself to be led up onto the platform, where he stood beside the Grand High Witch and said, "Okay, where are my 6 chocolate bars?" I saw the witch who had let him in quietly putting the chain back on the door handles. Bruno didn't notice this. He was too busy asking for this chocolate. "The time is now 1 minute before 3:30, announced the Grand High Witch. "What the heck is going on?" Bruno asked. He wasn't frightened, but he wasn't looking exactly comfortable either. "What is this?" he said. "Give me my chocolate." 30 seconds to go, cried the Grand High Witch, gripping Bruno by the arm. Bruno shook himself clear and stared at her. She stared back at him, smiling with the lips of her mask. Every witch in the audience was staring at Bruno. 20 seconds, cried the Grand High Witch. Give me the chocolate, shouted Bruno, becoming suddenly suspicious. Give me the chocolate and let me out of here. 15 seconds, cried the Grand High Witch. Will one of you crazy punks kindly tell me what this is about? Shouted Bruno. 10 seconds, cried the Grand High Witch. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have ignition! I could have sworn I heard an alarm clock ringing. I saw Bruno jump. He jumped as though someone had stuck a hat pin deep in his bottom and he yelled, Ow! He jumped so high that he landed on a small table up there on the stage and he started hopping about on the table, waving his arms and yelling his head off. Then suddenly he became silent. His whole body stiffened. The alarm has gone off, shrieked the Grand High Witch. The mouse maker is beginning to work. She started hopping about on the platform and clapping her gloved hands together, and then shouted out, This smelly brat is filthy scum, this horrid little louse will very, very soon become a lovely little mouse. Bruno was getting smaller by the second. I could see him shrinking. Now his clothes seemed to be disappearing, and brown fur was growing all over his body. Suddenly, he had a tail, and then he had whiskers. Now, he had 4 feet. It was all happening so quickly. It was only a matter of seconds. And all at once, he wasn't there anymore. A small brown mouse was running about on the table. "Bravo!" yelled the audience. "She's done it! It works! It's fantastic! It's colossal! It's the greatest yet! You are a miracle, oh brainy one!" They were all standing up and clapping and cheering, and the Grand High Witch produced a mousetrap from the folds of her dress and started to set it. "Oh no," I thought. "I don't want to see this. Bruno Jenkins may have been a bit of a stinker, but I'm dashed if I want to watch him having his head chopped off." "Where is he?" snapped the Grand High Witch, searching the platform. "Where has that mouse got to?" She couldn't find him. Clever Bruno must have jumped down off the table and scampered into some corner, or even down a small hole. Thank heavens for that. "It matters not," shouted the Grand High Witch. "Silence and sit down!" Here's a picture of his transformation. So you can see up here is Bruno. And as he changes here, he's getting smaller and he's growing fur, and there's his tail, and then he's got all 4 of his feet, and here he is. Boom. And that, my friends, is a cliffhanger of an ending. And that just means that they left us at a very good part where it makes us want to keep reading. But I am not going to keep reading today because we are on to the next chapter in this video. So I have your 3 questions for you. Number 1, what does the narrator know about Bruno Jenkins? So our narrator, or the little boy, tells us a little bit about who Bruno Jenkins is, and your question wants you to give a few sentences telling what the narrator says he knows about Bruno. Not just one thing, give a few things that the narrator describes. And then number 2, in detail, so that means you need to include details and specific ones from the passage. Describe what happens to Bruno Jenkins during this chapter. This again is one of those questions that it's best if you start with first, next, then last in your sentences. So give me at least 3 or 4 sentences here. And then number 3 is a prediction. So this isn't going to be wrong or considered wrong if you have some evidence to back up why you think that this is what's going to happen next. So use the text to inform your prediction. And if you have any questions, please let you know. Our next chapter is called The Ancient Ones. So it would be beneficial for you to figure out what the word ancient means before we move on to the next chapter. So good luck with your questions.